Here's the question. The Chosen is a great show, they say, but some Christians are saying we shouldn't watch it because of the Mormon influence. Should we not watch The Chosen if Mormons are involved? Great question. And it's one that's really hard to cover without talking a little bit about what the Mormons believe and why that's a problem for what I would consider myself to be an evangelical Christian. So Mormons call themselves Christians, and they use a lot of the same source material and the same language as we do, but they do have some very different beliefs, and they use that language somewhat differently, and I wouldn't consider them to be an evangelical Christian, a Christian that believes in the gospel the same way that I understand it and sharing that with other people. So what are those differences that Mormons believe that we wouldn't agree with? Well, the Mormons believe in something called eternal exaltation, that people can eventually become gods. Mormons also have extra scriptures like the Book of Mormon that have questionable origins and no basis from our perspective for being considered authoritative scripture, but they would consider the Book of Mormon and a few other books as being on par with as authoritative as scripture. Mormons also don't believe that Jesus has the position of son within the Trinity, but actually he is a literal child of God and not God. So we would say the Son of God is not son in the sense of a child that has been produced by a father, but son in the sense of position. It's a royal son. You may have heard of the term royal we, which is the idea of we being used to speak of prominence and preeminence, not necessarily a plurality. Well, a royal son is not necessarily someone who's a biological son of someone else. And it was used in ancient times to refer to kings who had positioned themselves under the authority of another king, but they weren't actually their son. So you'd have a greater king saying to a lesser king in some instances, my son. It's a term of respect and endearment, but also one of authority. Or you would have another king referring to himself as the son of another king, or another king as his father. And that was a position of sonship, not necessarily a lineage of sonship. So we would say that Jesus is fully God and is the Son of the Trinity, the Son of God. Mormons take that in a different way and say, no, he's literally a child of God created by God. Now, here's the big one, and there are more than this, but I'll just give you the high-level ones. The big one is that Mormons believe that salvation is made possible by Jesus, but not fully possible only by believing in Jesus and his sacrifice on the cross. So for a Mormon, obedience to the commandments and good works that you do and participation in church rituals are also necessary for salvation. And they help to determine what level of heaven you make it to in the afterlife. So Mormons are not Christians in the same way that we would refer to evangelical Christians. They don't follow the teachings of Jesus and the apostles that salvation is by grace and not by works. They reject the teaching of Jesus that he is one with the Father. And they are, to be honest with you, guilty of breaking the commandment to not add words to Scripture. They literally add things that they say are authoritative Scripture. And we would certainly disagree with that. So obviously that creates a challenge in partnering with Mormons on spiritual endeavors. There's a lot of overlap in what we believe about history together. The Old and New Testament accounts are both held by evangelical Christians and Mormons, but we differ significantly on our theology, and in particular how one can be saved, which is kind of a big deal. And if you've watched our series at First Free called Undivided, you know that we would put a lot of this that I'm talking about in the dogma bucket. It's the most important stuff we believe and what determines if you're actually a regenerated child of God. And quite simply, Mormons are not. They, according to our theology, are not regenerated children of God, and they preach a false gospel, which is a dangerous thing. And we certainly pray for them and would want them to find the truth that's in the Bible they read, but they've added so much to it and distorted it that it is not a true version of what Jesus taught or the apostles taught or God handed down to us. So then the question is, when do we say we can't work together? When can we not partner with, and what can't we partner with someone who disagrees with us theologically, who doesn't agree with the gospel, who believes a different version, has a different religion? Can we work on a job together? Can we work in the same company together? Well, of course. Yeah, that's no problem. And we see that in Scripture as well, working well with unbelievers and getting along with each other. That's fine. Can we do good in the community together? I think so. Let's say that there's some project to clean up a city and Mormons are involved and other Christians are involved, different groups of people together. Some people that would have a different faith are involved. Should evangelical Christians then say, whoa, wait a minute, if you don't all agree with my statement of faith, we're not going to help clean up the city, or we're not going to go do this good thing, or we're not going to help the poor, or we're not going to provide for this food pantry, or whatever it is. No, I think we can partner on those things and do good there without it corrupting our own theology. It doesn't mean we're going to start adopting what they believe as our views, and it doesn't even mean we're promoting their views by doing that. What about publishing a Christian book? So we're getting closer now. What if a Christian author writes a great book and there's a company that happens to be run by Mormon people who are willing to publish it? And maybe no other publishing company is willing to, because we see that kind of thing these days where there's a lot of discretion that publishing companies will take in what they're actually willing to publish. And so, there are instances where there may be a company that doesn't share the same beliefs you have, but they're at least willing to publish your material. Is it okay to allow them to distribute your book, even if they have different beliefs? And that may be a personal conviction call. We might put that in the conviction bucket and say, for some people, yeah, I'm okay with a company that's run by Mormons distributing my Christian book. That it's a business arrangement, and that's all it is. I'm not saying I agree with all of their personal beliefs, but if they're willing to get this material out there to people, then that's okay. And so you can see how we're edging right up now to the idea of a TV show. Books are a pretty easy one to talk about. Movies and TV shows are really difficult to produce, and to make them really good and not have them be cringy. You know how many Christian movies have been produced and TV shows that they're not the type of thing you would necessarily recommend to other people, because they don't look very good, and you get so distracted in the poor production quality sometimes, or the poor acting, the poor writing, the poor directing, you name it, poor graphics, and you end up saying, I love the idea, love the concept. If this had been produced better, it would have been great, but it's just not something I would recommend to people because of the low production value. Well, what if you've got a company that's run by Mormons that's willing to help produce and distribute your Christian TV show or movie that's got great content, and they're not saying you have to incorporate their Mormon theology, but they've got the production studio, they've got the distribution, and it's a business arrangement. And what if there are no Christian companies that can do that work? And maybe the alternative is working with a secular company who either will not put out your material, which is very likely, or will insist on so many changes that it doesn't even reflect the true Scripture anymore. That, I think, is the situation that The Chosen was in. Would it be nice if The Chosen was distributed by an evangelical Christian company? Yeah, that'd be great. But as far as I know, none exist that could have pulled this off. So the choice is either to work with a secular company that definitely doesn't align with your beliefs at all and might force you to compromise on the content, or work with a faith-based group, different faith, I know, but still a faith-based group, different theology, troubling theology, I'll admit it, but similar values and morals, and a lot of the history overlaps completely, where they will get the content out there. It's an unfortunate choice, I agree. But personally, I think they made the right choice. I would rather have The Chosen out there and available than not produced at all, or produced very poorly. It was a big gamble to take a risk on this show too, by the way. I mean, Dallas has been open about the fact that up until The Chosen, his ventures into media were not good. They were big flops. And he has this idea for a TV show, and for any company to take the risk and be willing to put some money into this and some resources, there was no guarantee it was going to become the phenomenon that it is today and so popular. So I'm not sure any other company would have taken that risk on them. There's another aspect of this too that you may not realize, which is the Mormons actually have the best sets, the best movie sets and TV sets for Israel already built and ready for filming. So a lot of the work that you see with the buildings and the shots in Jerusalem and the different steps and pillars and columns and pools and all the things that you see there, the houses and all that, the Mormons have phenomenal sets that are really, really good and ready to go. And so the show was able to make use of those right away. That was some value that they brought to this equation that would have been horrendously expensive, I think, to try to produce otherwise. Now the show has enough clout that if they wanted to, they might be able to produce some of those things on their own probably. But when they're sitting right there and they're just wonderful, and it's a business arrangement. This isn't a church. This is not really, it's not even a parachurch ministry. This is a business arrangement. This is an entertainment show. And I think that the producers of the show, and Dallas Jenkins in particular, have been very, very clear about that. Dallas Jenkins, I've seen some interviews with him talking about this. He's been very careful how he words things because he does not want to offend his Mormon counterparts and business partners. Certainly, I appreciate that, and probably some Mormon friends, which I think is wonderful. We should have friends who don't agree with us. We shouldn't just be exclusive on who we're willing to associate with and be with, for sure. But I believe Dallas, from what I've seen from him, is a strong Christian. He's a believer. He understands the problems with Mormon theology, but he does not see this as a church. He sees this as a business venture, as a distribution partner, which is what it is. It's faith-based entertainment. It's a show that's written and directed by Christians. Not all of the cast are necessarily Christians. I'm fairly certain some of them are not Christians, and I know that some of them are different varieties of Christians that may or may not believe in the same gospel message. But really, I don't think the point of this is to teach theology as much as to show the life of Jesus in a really compelling way that's never been done before. And I think the benefits of it being there for us far outweigh the negatives of it not being an exclusively evangelical Christian created show. I've even seen in my own personal life just friends and neighbors and other people who are not believers really get interested and ask questions based on The Chosen. One other thing I'll share with you, I know that there were 3 main scholars that were consulted on the writing for The Chosen, and one of them was, I believe, a Messianic Jew, so a Christian with Jewish background, an evangelical Christian, and a Roman Catholic scholar. I have not seen anything about there being any Mormon influence in the actual show. I also have not seen anything in the show that would make me think that there's been any Mormon influence behind the scenes. Nothing that would tease at Mormon theology or anything like that. I do know that a lot of Mormons love the show, and there's probably not a lot there they would disagree with because they agree with the New Testament and they agree with the history about Jesus. They disagree about the theology around Jesus, but the life of Jesus they're going to agree with. And so it broadens the audience for this. And who knows, it's possible that there'll be Mormons who, because of the connection with the Mormon distribution company, they watch the show and they start to get curious about it and they realize, this Jesus seems a little different than the Jesus that I'm used to. So that's my thought about the Mormon connection with The Chosen. I also want to say that there are a lot of websites out there that are basically Christian hit blogs that attack The Chosen. And some people have even sent me examples of these. I've looked into those. What I saw on those so far were really harsh accusations that in my research turned out to be lies. So I haven't actually seen any claims yet about the Mormon connection with The Chosen and the supposed influence that was having that turned out to be true. And I watched the actual clips that they were referencing, and the things they said Dallas said were not actually true at all. So that presents a real problem for me. It's very interesting to me that people claiming to be evangelical Christians would be attacking this show written and directed by an evangelical Christian to try to get people not to watch it, and would be lying in their accusations. So my conclusion to all of this is that The Chosen, it's just a TV show. It's not a church. It's not a parachurch. It's faith-based content. And you know what? If Disney puts out a movie next week with Christian themes and it's faithful to the text, am I going to support that? Yeah, I probably am. Not because I agree with everything Disney does, but I do want to send the message that, hey, content based on the Bible that's faithful and well done when it doesn't contain immorality and it promotes Christian values, that's desirable, and I want to see more of that. That's why I loved it when Disney produced the Chronicles of Narnia movies, and I went and saw those in theaters and thought, hey, this is great. Do I support those movies and go watch them in theaters because I love everything Disney does? No, but I do want to vote with my dollars and say, hey, more of this. This is good. So I think the same thing could be true of The Chosen, even if some of the people involved in making it and some of the distribution partners might not have the same beliefs that we do.